be another week of Final Third Reacts as football delivers yet again with more drama for us to react to on the day that we record. This time we're going to have a look at the sacking of Rodgers, which is something we didn't feel could fit into the podcast because there's quite a lot to talk about. I'm Rob Canavan, joined by Conor Kelly to talk about this.
Hello.
How's it going? I suppose the point to start with any sacking is, was it justified? Were they right in pulling the trigger? Because sometimes managers have to go. It's just not working. So what would be your take on that?
Well, there's been a sense of inevitability about it for weeks.
Yeah,
Rodgers is, even Rodgers, the man with the effusive press conferences, and his self-confidence seems to have just gone in the last couple of weeks. His interviews were fairly forlorn.
Yeah, did feel like treading water a little bit. Looking back, obviously hindsight 2020, but
in the last couple of weeks he's been talking about how, he's looking at his what he's going to do after Liverpool and stuff like that. And it's just
seriously
not in a delusional way, but just one day I won't manage this club, etc., etc.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Sort of understanding that it's probably the writing is probably on the wall. Yeah. But whether or not it's justified, I think it's been a little bit harshly done by, to be honest.
Look, I think it was Michael Cox on Twitter saying it's unusual, despite the poor nature of the results. I mean, Sion, Carlisle, Bordeaux, etc. were draws. It's unusual to see a coach go after 6 games undefeated.
Yeah.
It's not like there was a humiliating defeat. That's usually, you lose that game, you kind of go, ease off. Draw on the Merseyside derby. No.
I think they're either 2 points or 3 points off top 4. There's 6 points off Manchester City at the top of the table.
Yeah.
So
if this was May, the season wraps up a little bit earlier this season. Let's just say May for argument's sake. If this was May, you'd probably be reasonably happy as a Liverpool fan.
Would they? I don't know. Well,
I would.
Yeah. Realistically, you would be.
Yeah.
That ties into a point we'll bring up later. But I do think that Rodgers, he's made a lot of mistakes. But as a young manager, he will make mistakes. He's been put into it in a job in the most intense scrutiny probably of any job in world football, Barcelona or Real Madrid.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, except for the fact that Barcelona and Real Madrid win, which takes a lot of the pressure off. You look at Luis Enrique in trouble last January,
and
in May.
They're actually huge clubs. At the moment. They're actually in terms of European football, they are 2 of the 3 super club powerhouses.
Well, I mean, Luis Enrique doesn't get his best players taken off them; he just gets more of them.
Yeah,
you have 3.
You have a transfer ban, you get more players.
Well, that's another episode.
I think that what he achieved in 2013-14 when he got them within the Gerrard slip of winning the league title was incredible. Now, of course, it was actually based on the brilliance of Luis Suarez, and there's no doubting that, because they take Suarez out of the team, they automatically drop back to where they were.
Yeah,
which is 5th or 6th in the table.
But they're still leaking goals for fun at that stage. They just scored more.
But Rodgers deserves the credit for building the team around Luis Suarez. And I think in the second half of that season, they played with Coutinho, Sturridge, Suarez, and Sterling as a 4 up front, basically. Yeah.
They were pretty irresistible.
They played some of the best football any team in the Premier League over the last 10 years. Name me a team that was more entertaining.
Not for that half season.
Carlo Ancelotti's Chelsea team, possibly.
Yeah.
That's the only team you could mention.
Yeah, they were incredible. Probably what caused the downfall. Being unable to just play really shit football and win when Chelsea came to Anfield.
Yeah, exactly. Rodgers, looking back on it now, it looks foolhardy, but at the time Rodgers probably thought, well, this is the only way this team can play, so we'll set up. Yeah.
It's hard to argue with that.
Exactly.
So, do you think he's hamstrung by unrealistic expectations then? Because on last week's pod we had a chat about Pochettino and how relative to Spurs' wage budget, it's success, or at least it's where they should be. Rodgers has averaged out at where he should be. So
5th.
The unrealistic expectations are probably, like you say, the speculation. You've got the ex-players, and there are so many great Liverpool ex-players. To be fair, they're everywhere in the media. Being replaced by United now, but that's just age.
Yeah.
But the pressure is unbelievable. The expectations they're not realistic.
No, they're not realistic. Their wage bill is the 5th highest in the Premier League, and that usually indicates where a team finishes in the league.
Yeah.
So
particularly long term.
Exactly. So Rodgers finished 7th, 2nd, 6th. Add that all up, averages out 5th.
Probably in the right place.
Yeah,
it's a strange one.
So I mean, 5th is where Liverpool are at the moment. They are not a club who can realistically expect to challenge for titles at the moment.
And play in Europe and go for a cup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because they lose their best players every year. They've lost Sterling, they've lost Suarez, they'll probably lose Coutinho if he has another good season this season.
You'd have to feel.
You'd have to think.
Well,
so.
if there's no Champions League football, Coutinho's a Champions League footballer.
Yeah.
I feel. Anyway, that's where his level is going, if not already there.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, by overachieving and finishing second, Rodgers basically put himself in a no-win position in the third season.
Yeah.
Because as soon as Suarez was sold, that was pretty much that. Liverpool had no chance of replicating the season previous. So I think again, you mentioned the ex-players, the unrealistic pressure and expectation. Some of the fans are expecting utopia. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you always hear about it, don't you? And it comes from the ex-pros and it comes from the fans. So I suspect it's a trickle-down effect that it comes from the ex-pros. So, but the standards the club has set, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The standards the club has set is one of relative decline over about 20-25 years.
It's 26 years, 25 years since they won a league.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not gotten better at any point. No. It's only gotten worse, really.
Brief glimpses of returning to the promised land.
Yeah.
And a Champions League in Istanbul that they were one of the most fortunate teams to ever win the Champions League.
When you look at it now, when you look back on the noughties, the heady noughties or whatever, the 2005 Champions League success looks about as continuous as Porto's success. Yeah. They won a Champions League too,
pretty much.
Won in the noughties, and
Porto won their final 3-0.
Yeah, I think that when you look back on when you maybe you have kids or something, you show them an annual of football, you go, oh, Liverpool won a Champions League in the noughties.
Yeah.
Same way you'll say Porto won a Champions League, Monaco won a Champions League final. They're not a consistent Champions League final team. So even like United were at one point throughout the noughties, stretching into this decade. So I think he has them where they were. The next part we want to go on to then is successors, because who in their right mind would take the job, bearing in mind what we've just said, losing your best player every season.
Just quickly wrap up the last point. One ex-pro who spoke a lot of sense was, of course, Jamie Carragher.
Yeah.
Jamie Carragher said, we're kidding ourselves at Liverpool if we think we are a top club. We are essentially the same as Tottenham, which they are, because like
fifth and sixth.
Fifth and sixth. There's a top four, and there's another bracket of teams just behind, which are fifth and sixth. And to bridge that gap is incredibly difficult. It's not like going from 12th to, let's say, 10th, or 12th to 6th. It's a lot harder to go from 6th to 5th, and then 5th to 4th.
Yeah.
Anyway, successors. Obviously, like every manager possible has been linked to the job at this rate.
Yeah.
But the most realistic, the one that looks like it's going to happen is Klopp, Jurgen Klopp. I personally, I just think it's a poison chalice, that job. I just think that any manager that takes over that job, you have to balance expectations with, and it must be said, FSG, they're not and maybe they shouldn't, but they haven't invested the money that the top 2 or 3 teams have.
No.
So and they haven't been able to because of they're not making the revenue that those top 4 teams are. But I think a lot of people have sort of called out the owners in this one.
Yeah.
But, like, if their motives are to make money out of the club, but that's their right. They bought the club.
They own it.
Yeah,
it's capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. It would take an incredibly special manager in probably special circumstances for Liverpool to ever achieve.
So you feel,
and long-term success, I just don't see long-term success happening, because even if they win the league, I think they'll lose all the best players.
Not sustained. Yeah, exactly. You just pinch them and go, oh, these are really good for this league, thanks.
To be honest, I think Liverpool fans would probably take that, though. They'd probably take just a league title and then any bit of success.
Okay, so that's a wrap. So what are your feelings on the Rodgers second? Harsh, justified? Was it going nowhere in the end? Anyway, leave your comments in the section below. Subscribe to Final Third TV on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at the Final_Third, and thanks for watching.